any issue that was against the Constitution, that we give them the chance and allow the appointing authority to do as he wishes, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I sat in this vetting process, and it has come at the right time when we are reviewing our foreign policy as a country to be able to align to the shifting global dynamics, Mr. Speaker, and to be able to align to our national interests, Mr. Speaker. And that is why these appointments are very, very crucial. Mr. Speaker, the issue of Dr. Karanja, a very, very well-published and renowned academic, Mr. Speaker, has a very wide experience, Mr. Speaker, and it has also come at the right time when we are expecting to hold the Conference of Parties, or what you call COP30, in Belém, Brazil, this year in November, Mr. Speaker. So we are hoping that he will be able to help us also navigate as we send our team to be able to negotiate and make progress for our country. Mr. Speaker, the other thing we were able to raise to Dr. Karanja is specifically of the missions or ambassadorial missions becoming the first stop of our Kenyans who are outside the country, especially students, when they are stranded, when we have issues in other countries. These ambassadors must be reachable, must be accessible, and must be responsive to our citizens outside the country, Mr. Speaker. These ambassadors, permanent rep, and consul generals, Mr. Speaker, are the image that we are projecting of the country and of the president in the outside world. Mr. Speaker, I also agree with the previous speakers in terms of at the time when we get a person declining an appointment, Mr. Speaker, it definitely sends a very bad picture to have Accra becoming rejected twice, Mr. Speaker. So it is important that, as has been said by the mover, that the head of public service does proper consultation with the appointing authority to ensure that if someone is not ready to take up an appointment, you reject it at the right time. Let it not go to the Gazette notice, because when it goes to the Gazette notice, even if you write to the clerk, it will already have gone out, Mr. Speaker. So the timing is very critical that we have it checked. Mr. Speaker, the issue of linking the country with our country is very important. It has become a global village. We hope that these three appointees will do a good job. I want to also pick up on Honorable Namwamba, a person who has served in this house for 10 years, has been a cast, Mr. Speaker, and we were able to interrogate in terms of his knowledge, in terms of representing us in the UNEP and UNON. And one issue, Mr. Speaker, that I personally feel about UNEP and UNON is that despite being hosted in this country, if you go to Switzerland, if you go to New York, you will see the linkage between the national and domestic interests with the offices of the UN that are located in those areas, Mr. Speaker. I feel like Gigiri in UNEP and UNON, they feel detached from what we are doing as a country. So I would hope, as he promised, that he will be able to act as a bridge between getting the bottom-up economic transformation agenda, the national interest of this country linked into these offices, Mr. Speaker. Let Kenyans also feel them as part of the global world. Mr. Speaker, the issue of Haiti is very critical. The person who has been nominated there, who is Gabo, Mr. Speaker, has been in the police for over 30 years, ended up as the DIG, has been in the policy implementation at that level, Mr. Speaker. And the one question we hope and we actually put up to him is that as we already sent our first contingent of police officers to help restore peace in Haiti, we will be looking that he'll be the go-between for those officers, because first of all, for obvious reasons, the officers are not unionized, Mr. Speaker. It would be very unfair or unfortunate for our issues, especially of welfare of those officers, to go to the media. We see them on BBC, we see them in other areas, complaining that their welfare is not being taken care of, Mr. Speaker. So we'll be hoping that when Gabo reports, if appointed and if passed in this house, Mr. Speaker, he will be able to do a good job to ensure that he's the go-between between these officers and of course other Kenyans, Mr. Speaker, who are in that area, who would actually be threatened by any issue or who would be having an issue of welfare. They would wish to communicate so that they're able to sort it out in-house before it gets out, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, that being said, I hope that we can also as a country be able to develop a foreign policy as it is being done now but through the ministry that is based on fundamental principles of peaceful coexistence so that we can be able to preserve our national security and also have peaceful coexistence in the global world and where we sit. With that, Mr. Speaker, I support. Thank you.
Ole Sunguli. Mr. Speaker, I also stand to support these appointments. Being appointed to be ambassador, as you did appoint me to go to China, is one of the biggest, one of the most important jobs that you can get as a country. Actually, it's the only time you can be called Your Excellency without being elected. And that shows you the importance that is attached to this particular office. Mr. Speaker, I concur with the committee, except when I listen to the chairman of the committee describing, for instance, Dr. Andrew Karanja, and I listened to our friend Mother from Gilgil saying that he's well-educated, but the chairman says that we appointed him, notwithstanding the fact that he cannot communicate very well. Now, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Speaker, of course the duty of an ambassador is to communicate, to speak for the country. I find one thing that is being omitted all the time, that ambassadors are being vetted or appointed. It does not happen in Western countries. That you are appointed to a Portuguese-speaking country and you can't speak Portuguese. You are appointed to a French-speaking country and you can't speak French. Now, if Dr. Karanja does not communicate well in English, what do you think about him communicating well in Portuguese? I think we are up, like Honorable Juliet is saying.
Order, Julius. There's a point of order from Wangari.
Mr. Speaker, I don't remember anyone saying that Dr. Karanja cannot communicate effectively in English, because he's actually a graduate of a PhD holder, Mr. Speaker, and was very fluent and very well conversed with the English language. The only issue we had was the issue of speaking in Portuguese, and we've had others who have gone, including yourself, without speaking the local language.
Yes, Junet.
Mr. Speaker, of course.
Hold on, Sunguldi. Yes.
Mr. Speaker, I want to also say that having a PhD does not mean that you know English. You can be having a PhD and you don't know English, because you saw the other day in Eldoret, there was a university that gave honorary degrees of PhDs and people were in goals. How do you know those people speak English? How can you confirm that those members speak English? But it's not.
Order, members. Honorable Sunguli, I appointed you to China without you knowing any Chinese language.
So, Mr. Speaker, that is why, with the benefit of the hindsight, yes, I'm able to advise that yes, it becomes a problem. But I took an immediate measure and learned Chinese. Yes. And Mr. Speaker, you can also attest that when you came to China, I was able to translate some Chinese, yes, to you. Yes, I'm just saying that in future, as we draft this policy, let us take that into consideration so that we can appoint people who are fit for purpose. And when I talk about lack of communication, I was referring to the speech of the chairman of the committee, that Dr. Karanja said that he is going to improve his communication skills once he gets back to Brazil. Mr. Chairman, Mr. Speaker, I also want to commend His Excellency the President for appointing Mr. Nur Gabo to be Consul General.
Yes, Bashir, what's the point of order?
Motion, sir. Honorable Speaker, I want to...
Sungule, do you want to be informed?
You know, I want to... Yes, you can let him inform.
Go ahead.
Honorable Speaker, I just want to inform Honorable Sungule and the House that the point where our chairman said that the nominee said he's going to improve on his communication skills was not particular on his speech, but it was, we asked him a question on why, when he was the Minister for Agriculture, that he kept quiet when so many things were happening, including the issue of vaccination. And he said there was a lapse, and that in future he's going to improve on his communication skills to the public and the people he serves. Thank you.
Yeah, that's why I said he was appointed in spite of that fact. But Mr. Speaker, I was at the point of saying that I wish to thank His Excellency the President for appointing Mr. Noor Gabo to be Consul General to the Port-au-Prince in Haiti. That, like Brazil is the only place where we have our embassy in South America. And I hope that this position that Mr. Noor Gabo has been appointed to becomes a position where he's ambassador to the Caribbean, rather than just a Consul General to Haiti. But it is a testament, Mr. Speaker, of the fact that the mission in Haiti is actually now getting some fruits. Contrary to what we had predicted here in this house, it seems like the brave sons of Kenya are at long last making a difference in Haiti. And I hope that Mr. Gabo will, if his presence in Haiti, in presence in the Port-au-Prince, will in fact now enhance our responsibilities in that place. And it is very important that we eventually take this office away from Haiti to in fact Kingston itself, so that the rest of the Caribbean can come under the loop of Kenya, because we need the Caribbean countries when it comes to our diplomacy. We have our foot in South America. We need to extend that to Santiago in Chile. We have our foot now in Port-au-Prince. We need to extend that again to the rest of the Caribbean. And I want to say, Mr. Speaker, that the ambassadors in our abroad ought to be looked after very well. I don't know the position currently, but when I last visited one country, it looked like the salaries were delaying, some of the allowances were delayed, and it is very embarrassing if the embassy abroad does not get its payments due on time. Mr. Speaker, I support.
Thank you. Mutunga.
Thank you very much, Honourable Speaker, for the opportunity to contribute to the adoption of the committee report on the appointments. Honourable Speaker, I have worked with and I know Dr. Karanja very well. Honourable Speaker, Dr. Karanja worked and retired from the World Bank. And the World Bank is not any mean hirer. The World Bank hires the best. So it's about the best brains that we have in this country. Honourable Speaker, we have had issues in the ministry. And probably the question may have tilted this response.
Yes, Kainan, what's the problem? I see an officer in mechanical gear. He's trying to fix. In the event I give you a chance to speak and it's not working, you'll get a portable mic. Go on, Mutunga.
Yeah, Honourable Speaker, I'm saying that we've had a few issues in the sector, especially the issue on vaccination, which needed to be properly delivered to the Kenyans. It could have been anybody here and any best speaker in this house or in this country. But Honourable Speaker, those are issues that are technical in nature and require the competent authority to respond. And the competent authority on this matter is the Director of Veterinary Services. So maybe we should be asking ourselves the extent to which the Director of Veterinary Services came out and gave out the issues, responded to the issues of vaccination. Honourable Speaker, I would like to thank the President for realizing it necessary to put Dr. Karanja specifically in Brazil. Honourable Speaker, Brazil is the hub of agriculture in the Southern American region, and it influences the entire world in terms of the agricultural products because they sell a lot to most parts of the world. In fact, they access more markets than we possibly could. They are much more advanced in research, in research on various types of products, and we can gain a lot in terms of opening up doors for Kenyans and opening up doors for technology transfer from Brazil to Kenya. So, having an agricultural background and being in a place where you will be able to identify what is good and useful for us, I believe Dr. Karanja will really will do a good job to help Kenyans out. Honourable Speaker, I want to very briefly speak about the appointment of the Consul General, Mr. Noah Yero Gubao. Honourable Speaker, I remember very well in this house, we had a heated debate on why should we send Kenyans to die in Haiti. Up to now, Honourable Speaker, I have not been able to find any situation where a Kenyan has died in Haiti. in any case, Kenyans are being commended for the good work that they are doing. And this is an outgrowth of that particular opening or that particular relationship that you created with Haiti. So, Mr. Speaker, I would like to appeal to our colleagues that sometimes we need to be objective in whatever we say so that we may also open up doors and avenues for Kenyans. Those Kenyans who are in Haiti are Kenyans who are earning a living, maybe even an extra coin out of such engagement, which are of international nature. Honourable Speaker, very briefly about our UNEP appointment. Honourable Speaker, this UNEP appointment is in Nairobi. United Nations Environmental Program is based here in Nairobi, and we believe and strongly believe that the appointment of Ababu Namwamba, Honorable, is going to help us to especially dig into the environmental issues in this country and relate what we are doing in terms of policies, in terms of legal and regulatory instruments of this country with what is happening at the UN. It will help us also to improve our sitting or our statement that we make at the international negotiation tables, and I believe that he will also take time to identify what other countries do so that they are so impactful when it comes to the outcomes of negotiations. In most of the cases, Honourable Speaker, we do not take the right people to the negotiating table. Sometimes we pick institutions, and these institutions may not have the correct personnel to go to the negotiations. And I would like to appeal to the Honourable Ababu Namwamba, once he takes this particular position, to look at the issue of negotiations, at the determinations of what are our proposals to the various issues that are under the table when it comes to the United Nations Framework Conventions on climate change, especially, and when the conference of parties are meeting. Honourable Speaker, with those few remarks, I support the adoption of this report.
Kainan. There's one behind you.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me an opportunity to contribute to this very important report. Mr. Speaker, diplomacy, by definition, is the art, science, and other means states use to interact with other nations to safeguard their national interest. Mr. Speaker, that being the case, in the modern day diplomacy, Mr. Speaker, was born out of the Vienna Convention of 1961,